Day 1. Russia declares war on the US and Ukraine. NATO and the EU decide to take action, but Russia has its own allies as well. Russia captures Ukraine. NATO decides to take action and start looking for allies around the globe. Mexico refuses to join NATO, so the US captures Mexico instead. Soon after, Vietnam decides to join Russia and his allies. Russia asks South Africa to join them. South Africa takes this opportunity and decides to accept. Russia persuades Indonesia to join them and their allies to win this World War III. South Africa wants to expand its nation through Africa and create the United African Nations. India decides to reunite British Raj in its own form, with the exception of Pakistan. The USA decides to ask the Caribbean countries to join NATO. They all deny the request and carry on with it until USA decides this is unacceptable and decides to invade the Caribbean countries instead. Because of the USA's increasing violence, Canada decides to leave NATO. Venezuela is asking Brazil if he could get permission from Russia to join. Russia says yes. Venezuela is very thankful and joins, along with Cuba. South Africa wants to expand further into Africa. South Africa follows deep into Africa and dominates the continent. Malaysia, Philippines, South Korea and Japan decide all to join NATO, with the exception that they're not in the North Atlantic. India and China decide to expand further into Asia, with India and China both going on a rampage through Asia. They admit to each other that they are now friends and will stop the conflicts between them, including Pakistan. North Korea conquers South Korea and Japan, while also China conquering the Philippines and Malaysia, with Vietnam and Laos, Thailand and Cambodia. Spain now wants to expand further into Africa as a counter for South Africa. They end up dominating the continent, with the exception of South Africa due to the fact that Spain is mostly European. Spain's economy has grown a lot due to the fact that they have won. South Africa feels very threatened and decides to also expand further into Africa. Instead of severe violence, South Africa kindly asks the nations to join him. All of them accepted. Australia and New Zealand are now asking to join NATO. But the USA said, since you're not in the Atlantic Ocean, we would usually say no. But since it is World War III, we will make the exception. Papua New Guinea, Australia and New Zealand are all very thankful for this and all make their pleas to the USA. Australia, New Zealand and Papua New Guinea decide to take action straight away by conquering the Philippines and Indonesia, but they are quickly countered by all of the continents. Back in Africa, South Africa starts going on a rampage between different African countries and asserting their dominance over Spain ultimately. Spain decides to counter this threat by conquering the rest of the countries in Africa, kind of like the French Empire did. The Great War of South Africa versus Spain begins, with Spain making a strong start, but South Africa managing to push Spain far back into the continent by surrounding all of their armies and pushing them all way back. As you can see here, South Africa decides to push through at angles and Spain is completely countered. Russia thinks it hasn't been doing enough for itself, so it decides to conquer all the Baltic states, including Turkey and Moldova, Romania, Bulgaria, Greece. The United States simply tells Russia is evil and starts invading all the South American colonies since they will not join him in NATO. In this way, the USA is being a very big hypocrite in this stage of the war. The USA also conquered Brazil and also taken Cuba with it. Back in Africa, Spain decides to have another go against South Africa, this time being majorly successful, while asserting their dominance once again over Northwest Africa, and also NATO making a stand while conquering Ukraine back, Belarus, Lithuania, and Russia and the Baltic states. The rest of the countries decide to surrender, and NATO conquers the world. The world is again at peace. Apart from one place, the issue is not settled. In Africa, Spain makes a strong stand, with South Africa losing all their support to the states that have surrendered. Therefore, Spain makes a few easy pushes into Africa, making it all the way down, and even conquering the South African homeland as it is today. NATO has won the war, but what will happen now? World peace? Well, Armenia thinks not. I will be back, I promise you. The end. I hope you enjoyed, guys, and thank you very much for listening.